All right. Let's have a little bit of a talk here tonight about a few things coming up. I think what's on our minds mostly is there's so much information being distributed, and people are deciding without too much science who's right and who's wrong. And there's a big fight about masks, and there's a big fight about what businesses should be essential and which are not. There's lots of people being vicious online. I think this social media turns people sometimes into a little ornerier than they might normally be, and that's frustrating. But really it comes down to who do you turn to? Where's the truth? We've gotten so many conflicting things from the mainstream media that I've lost faith in them. I've seen so many times where their reporting is inaccurate, but then at the same time we see so much censoring going on where Google and Facebook and Twitter and they have people that decide what is truth and what is not, and they'll say, well, we censored this because of misinformation. But who's deciding what's misinformation and what's truth? And it really comes down to, it seems that whoever has the most money decides what truth is, and that's real frustrating. So there's a lot of censorship going on, and so I want to just talk a little bit about that tonight, and hopefully to help people not be scared, but to have hope and be confident in their immune systems and their health, and we'll go from there. So I just printed off the June 25th, 2020 update from the National Institutes of Health, the CDC website, their update on the treatment of COVID. They have an update, and they've changed things as we've gone. I also have here, I don't know if you can see very well, this is a graph that depicts the death rate in the United States in the last several years, and this huge spike right here is this year. And it's very interesting, this huge spike that is much larger than all the other years. Those other colors are other years. It's basically 2013 through 2020. So if you can see that big old spike right there, that's COVID. That's this year. But what's interesting about this huge spike, by the way, I'm getting this information from Del Bigtree, the High Wire. He's an investigative reporter. If you're not watching every Thursday, Del Bigtree on the High Wire, he does a program and he documents everything. I get all of his his bibliography. I get everything that's referenced that he talks about. And so he says, we're transparent. I invite you to look at our sources. So it's interesting. He was saying this big spike on this graph really troubled him. What we're finding out is this COVID has been around a lot longer than we thought. And so they're finding out that it was around long before February, long before January. Many experts believe that it was here in the United States, September, October, November, December. What they want to do is there's a professor at USC that is asking to have access to the blood banks and to analyze blood that was drawn September, October, November, December, and look for the antibodies to show that it has been around since then. And it's interesting that if you look at that big spike, that it comes right around April. which is interesting that it came in April. So we had the big lockdown, and then the CDC came out with their recommendations for treatment. And that treatment, a big part of the treatment was ventilators. And now, in retrospect, in hindsight, a lot of experts are saying, wow, ventilators were not the right treatment for COVID. And another thing that happened shortly after April, to add to that huge spike, which represents the death toll, is they allowed COVID positive patients in a few states to go into rest homes. So talk about a grass fire. The one group of people that we absolutely know were highest risk, we allowed COVID positive people to go into rest homes. And what happened was the governors of these states were worried about the ICUs being overcrowded. And so they actually forced the rest homes to let COVID positive people in. And that was a disaster. And there's a lot of people that are hoping that those governors are held accountable. We call it crimes against humanity. That this huge spike, a lot of experts feel that the reason that it's, as you see the other years, the cold and flu was going down by March and April, that trend, and then it gets worse in the winter times, as you can see. So that huge spike was at an abnormal time. It was in April and May. And what happened at that time was what we're describing. And there's many experts that feel that it's the mismanagement of COVID-19 that is responsible for that huge spike. So let's talk a little bit about the mismanagement. And now we get to this update from the National Institutes of Health. It's kind of interesting, and I get this information from watching the High Wire and Del Bigtree, that they're now saying that this hydrochloroquine is not a good treatment for COVID-19, which is interesting because in all the other countries, they're using it and it's successful. There's Dr. Rayout in France. He's showing numbers that it's 95% effective treatment, and that he's saying that COVID-19 is very, very treatable. So it's interesting that there's this strange agenda in the United States, basically Tony Fauci saying that they don't want to use hydrochloroquine. And then we find out that they came out with some studies, and they're bogus studies. One of them has completely been taken off, that they found out it was completely made up to make hydrochloroquine look bad. And then there's another study now that they're referencing saying that this is why we're saying don't use hydrochloroquine. And this study was set up to fail. And 600 milligrams is the dose that they're giving people in France that's working 95% of the time. And in this study, they were giving people 2,400 milligrams. They were giving them a lethal dose, and some people even died. And then they used that to say that hydrochloroquine is dangerous. But they gave them a lethal dose on purpose to make hydrochloroquine look bad. So then you've got to ask yourself, what's their agenda? Why do they not want to recommend hydrochloroquine, a drug that has been around for 50 years, and its safety and efficacy has already been established? And so if it was so dangerous, where have they been for 50 years? So the Food and Drug Administration, their job is to protect us from harmful drugs. So why is it that in 2020, in May and June, now they're saying that it's dangerous? Where were they months ago, years ago, saying the same thing? So it lets you know that there's an agenda here that it's not good. And so now this new recommendation from the National Institutes of Health is recommending this drug, remdesivir. And the studies on, and it says it's an experimental. It's an experimental drug. It hasn't even been completely cleared through the FDA, but they're allowing it and recommending it. And the studies, it shows it to be about 30 to 40% effective. So they're dogging on hydrochloroquine that's over 90% effective in other countries. And they're saying that remdesivir is 30% effective, and they're recommending it as the treatment for COVID. So we refer back to this spike, and it makes me think more and more that the experts that are saying it's the mismanagement of COVID that was the problem, that kind of helps me feel like they might be onto something here. Mismanagement. There's a doctor in Ohio that is treating COVID patients very successfully, the same way that he's been treating flu for years and years with natural. What's interesting is one of the controversial things involving Tony Fauci is that a couple years ago in an interview he talked about how he takes vitamin C to stay healthy. That anytime he's around sick people, he takes vitamin C to boost his immune system. And now anybody that says vitamin C is getting censored and getting poo-hooed, and they're saying that it's not a treatment for COVID. So once again, this same interesting agenda keeps rearing its ugly head. So in Ohio, there's a Dr. David Brownstein, MD, that him and his business partner, they've treated hundreds of cases of COVID successfully with vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and iodine. Long before there was antibiotics, doctors used iodine very successfully, and it's still very effective. Iodine is effective. And they have specific protocol that you follow, and it's very successful. I've had this paper out on my desk since February, teaching people here's what you do. But this is effective for influenza. It's effective for coronaviruses. Back in 2003 when we had SARS, and I think it was 2008 when we had MERS, both coronaviruses that we've already experienced in this country, they used this treatment protocol very successfully. And so vitamin A is an antimicrobial, as well as vitamin A helps the cell wall to actually be strong, that viruses don't penetrate. Vitamin C, it's been proven for since the 60s that vitamin C is very effective to help us fight off illness. And then vitamin D is also an antimicrobial, and it boosts immune function. It's been proven. There's no debate on this until 2020, where they want this agenda pushed. And what is that agenda? Well, the agenda is with hydrochloroquine. It's been around for a long time, and it's cheap and it's effective, and nobody's making any money on hydrochloroquine. But if they can force everybody to get a vaccine that, by the way, doesn't exist, the vaccine doesn't exist, and they've been trying to make a corona vaccine for years and years and years unsuccessfully. And they found that it's dangerous, that coronaviruses act and respond differently than like influenza with vaccines. By the way, the influenza vaccine is 10 to 20% effective every year, and we still recommend it, which is insanity. But so do you realize how much money they stand to make if they can keep this virus alive, keep us hysterical long enough to get the vaccine pushed through, which is horrifying to me because in the trials it's not doing well. But if they can keep it alive long enough, if they can get, let's just say that they get, their goal is to get 7 billion people, everybody on the planet, to take this vaccine. Well, we'll do the math. If we're talking about $300 billion. So why are they poo-hooing vitamins? Why are they poo-hooing hydrochloroquine? It's because they have an agenda. And the National Institute of Health, Tony Fauci, they have an agenda. And it's based in Mordida. They have a lot of money at stake here. So the reason that we wanted to talk about this tonight is to help everybody just calm down, to settle down and know that this coronavirus, it's real. There is increased death rate from normal years. So yes, it is scary. Most likely, the high death rate is due to mismanagement, and the truth is always going to come out. And so when all this is said and done, we're going to look back on this and we're going to know the truth. We're going to find out that these experts that are saying that it's mismanagement. What would happen if from the very get-go all the television networks were saying, look, everybody, yes, there's a coronavirus coming around. We had a coronavirus in 2003. We had another one in 2008. We survived it just fine. Here's what we learned from those years, that we can manage this better, and people are going to be, we're going to be better off, and not shut down the economy, not shelter in place. It's like we didn't learn anything from those other infections. Same coronavirus infections. There's a little variation, but our immune system sees it as the same thing. So learning about your immune system, learning about those things that you can help your immune system fight better is the key. It is the key. So a coronavirus is the cold. And I've always quoted my grandpa. He said, look, if you get a cold, you can go down to the drugstore and you can spend $20-30 and get all kinds of products and take them all. In about a week, you're going to feel better. Or you can do absolutely nothing at all. In about a week, you're going to feel better. And people say there's no cure for the common cold. Well, the cure for the common cold is your immune system. Your immune system. Since Adam and Eve, we've been working through this common cold. And people ask me, well, Doc, are you nervous about being a chiropractor during coronavirus? Not at all. I've been a chiropractor for 28 years, so that means that I have adjusted people through, survived 27 cold and flu seasons. And this one will be no different. The human body has the ability to fight infection. And when you say we have to sterilize everything, we have to kill the virus. No. I hate to tell you this, but you have more viruses in your body than you have human cells. Your human cells are outnumbered by bacteria that live in you, and your human cells are outnumbered by virus 10 times more than the bacteria, maybe 100 times more, and you have fungi that live in you, and other little critters. And so to say that we have to kill those things to survive is completely obnoxious. We need to live in balance with our environment. Your immune system is largely in your gut, which is normal flora. And so our body knows how to handle viruses. Our immune system was created by God to do specifically that. And we've survived this long because it knows how to do that. Now, here's one more thing to think about with a virus. Is a virus, those little virus, they mutate. Every year, the influenza virus that goes around mutates. And the virus that starts in Phoenix in September, October, has mutated several times by April. It changes, okay? Think about this. A virus, if it has innate intelligence and it wants to survive, is it going to kill its host? No, it doesn't want to kill the host. So now there's experts pointing out that the coronavirus is not near as virulent in June as it was in March, because it doesn't want to kill its host. It wants to survive. We're going to get herd immunity. The virus is going to be less and less virulent. Our Governor Ducey that's saying, oh, we need to shut down gyms and we need to shut down theaters that were already shut down anyway, which is just ridiculous. It's okay to go into Home Depot and Walmart and all those things, but you can't go to the gym and work out because it's healthy. I'm struggling with that. But it's interesting that he didn't talk about the death rate that's dropped by 90%. So we're doing more testing. So more healthy people are being diagnosed with COVID. They've said all along that over 90% of people that get COVID are going to be asymptomatic. Healthy people, their immune systems function, they build antibodies, and they're just fine. And we move on. Back in February, I had a strange cough. I wouldn't doubt at all if it was COVID, because it was around long before than they said it was. And hopefully they'll give the people access to those blood banks so that they can prove that it's been around since before January, and that most of us are already immune to it. We're going to build herd immunity, just like in 2003 when the SARS COVID virus came around, and in 2008 when the MERS Mediterranean came around. It took about 18 months to 24 months, and it had gone all around the globe, and it was done. We had global herd immunity, and it's going to happen again. I really hope and pray that it comes before they come out. They push a vaccine through that's going to cause a lot of harm and damage. Everybody take a deep breath. You're a human being. We're all children of God. We're equipped to fight this thing off. We need to stop fighting, and we need to come together as human beings. On our counter, we have information about masks. It's interesting that decisions are being made by government officials that are not scientists, and just because somebody says that wearing a mask is very effective at slowing the spread doesn't mean it's true. And I have over 20 studies, scientific studies from PubMed, the National Library of Medicine, that says it's very debatable whether masks actually slow the spread or whether they're more harmful to you than not wearing a mask. Here's the latest one that came out, the New England Journal of Medicine. I want to just read to you one line, the summary. So after they reviewed several articles, and this was in the New England Journal of Medicine, I want to read to you what they said, okay? The extent of marginal benefit of universal masking. So after all this, they said the benefit is marginal, okay? The universal masking over and above these foundational measures is debatable. So that's their statement in the New England Journal of Medicine. It's very debatable. So to force it on people when there's scientists that are saying, no, there's risks. There's people all over this country that are driving in their cars with masks on and have become hypoxic and passed out and crashed. A few have died. And so if there's risk, there must be choice. There must be choice. We're Americans. We have fought for hundreds of years for freedom. And why are we just letting go of it so quickly? There's a lot of people that completely disagree, and there's a lot of science that says that this is very debatable. It's not just an open and shut case just because one guy says that the whole county in Maricopa needs to wear a mask. Doesn't mean it's true. It just means that government officials are pushing things onto us. So take your vitamins, get adjusted. I've said this through the whole thing. The Spanish flu of 1918 put chiropractic on the map because chiropractic was so successful at treating the Spanish flu of 1918. Globally, if you got the Spanish flu, 1 in 10 people died. But if they were getting chiropractic adjustments or osteopathic manipulation, it was 1 in 700 that died. So we get back to this spike right here that we've talked about. Is it mismanagement that caused that spike? I believe it is. Thank you for your time. Appreciate you. We're here for you. We love you. And we're going to get through this.